Hello, everyone. Welcome to Guildmaster Gaming. This time around, we have Kelly Lou Dennis, who is the writer, director, and star in a short film we saw at FilmQuest, which is called Good Girls Get Fed, a very intriguing film. And Kelly, I'm going to let you give a brief description of yourself and about your film.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I'm Kelly. I helped come up with the concept and put the film together with an amazing team of people. Good Girls Get Fed is a psychological horror about three women who are trapped in a room. We're not going to say a dark, dingy basement. We've been there, but this is just a room, and they are forced to compete in these degrading, disturbing challenges in order to earn food. Um, and it was great having so many people on board wearing multiple hats. I'm not the only one that has the multi-hyphenate going on, which often is what we do for our short films.
One of those things you see a lot of times in independent filmmaking. It's where this is my work.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I know you've talked before about where the concept of this came from, and it's very clear when we talked before at FilmQuest. It's a lot of things that we're seeing in terms of the challenges people face, but also what's out there on the web. And
Mhm.
one of the things we were kind of getting into a little bit is you take this to a different level, showing the societal acceptance and giving it just that extra level of cringe. So, what kind of drove you to want to take that next step?
Sure. Yeah, great question. Thank you. I think when we take a look at the things that people do that they really don't want to, or perhaps we don't know why people do what they do, but it's very easy from the outside to judge. I'm very fascinated by what drives people to break their moral codes, to hurt themselves in order to do X, Y, Z, and why. So I think there's something very interesting about the dynamic of three women. There are different people which of them is going along with these challenges because she's being told to? Which of them is going along with it because she's trying to protect the other two? Which of them is going along with it because she's just her ego and her pride are telling her, I am not going to let this guy win, or whoever's on the other side, sending us these horrible instructions. Um, yeah, I'm very interested in what gets us to do immoral or painful or just uncomfortable things. And on a larger scale, I think it's very important to take a look at what our society is setting us up to um, accept or do. Or I think with acceptance, it's a big thing of accepting, well, this is just how things are done. This is how things always have been. This is just how it is for people like you, whatever that you may mean. Um, yeah, so I think that taking a look at how these things affect us in our everyday life, from big dramatic events to really small, incidental, everyday occurrences. I think that's how we can really take a look at and see how it's really affecting us in ways we may not be completely aware of.
Now, I do remember at the festival during the screening when it gives that little bit of a twist there on the societal aspects. There was
Mhm.
kind of a general just, oh, throughout the entire audience. And I think that's probably what you were going for.
It was. I think to have a story about these women, that's a valid enough story. Their struggle, their similarities, their differences, but yeah, I think making a statement, a broader statement about why many people, but especially many women, are put into situations where they are scrutinizing their own bodies or engaging in acts or situations that are really dicey and they're not comfortable with, but they do it because there's some reason, right? There's some reason that people engage in these things. And it's, I think, very easy to judge and say, oh, well, they're doing it because they have low morals or they're just desperate or whatever. But I think there's a much broader thing, like anyone who survived the diet culture wave of the early 2000s and the magazines and the ads and everything. I mean, props to all of us for still standing just past that, but that's going to psychologically affect all of us for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, and we are at the start of a new year as we're talking. And it's interesting. I was just talking to a friend kind of along those same things about the diet, where now they have the injected diet stuff that people are using that is causing unknown stuff. We
Yeah.
had the Fin craze, and we were going through a number of them over the years. It was like,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, so I understand what you're saying there. There's a lot of interesting aspects. So I saw that the film was originally out in 2023. So
Mhm.
that kind of leads me to believe that FilmQuest was nearing the end of your film festival run.
Yes.
So do you have any more festivals left that you can announce, or maybe what's beyond for, Good Girls Get Fed in terms of if somebody wants to see it?
Sure. We will be playing at Oregon Short Film Festival this weekend on the 11th. So that's very exciting. We just found out about another one. It'll be our first time playing in Atlanta. So that'll be announced probably next week. And I think that'll wrap up the festival journey. And right now we're looking at a few different options to see where we want the film to live. That's always an interesting dynamic, figuring out where you want it to live. Oh, but should we fight to make money for it or whatever? But right now, the key focus for me has been developing the full-length version of Good Girls Get Fed. So, developing the script, bringing on members of the team, and getting that up and going.
So it sounds like you're working on the script now to turn it into a full feature.
Yeah, I have the feature script, but polishing, polishing, polishing. That's never going to stop. But building out the team is really our focus right now.
I'm trying to remember which artist said it was art is never finished, it's abandoned. I want to say
Oh no.
I think want to say it was Da Vinci, but I'm not sure. But it was one of the great masters of art. So
I wish I could say I don't relate, but
any of us that do creative stuff, we understand that you
we get
finally have
it.
to just say, okay, done.
I'm walking away. I'm walking away. Okay.
So you got that going on. Um, and we kind of talked where what kind of moving on with that, you've got this feature coming up. Is there any other works that you're working on that people might be able to keep an eye out for?
Sure. It's interesting. People often ask me if I had to pick one between acting, writing, and directing, which I would pick. And I really have tried to come up with an answer, and I don't have one. So it's interesting trying to go after three different career paths at the same time and not letting one take over the other. Because when you get an audition as an actor, I mean, everything stops, right? Because there's a deadline. It has to come in. You got to do the work. So everything stops. That's like the loud child that needs attention. And I feel like on the flip side, the writing side of my brain, the writer, that's the quiet kid that just sits in the corner and just accepts what they're given. So I have to like carve out time to always work on the script. But I'm working on a short film starting this weekend that I'll be just acting, glorious, just acting. But I'm really excited about it. I met this writer director at FilmQuest this year. And yeah, I think it's going to be a fun one. And I'm writing two other feature film scripts. One is a bloody slasher, which I know I'm going to have a lot of fun with, and a sci-fi love story. So we'll see which of those fights to the top and comes out first.
Okay, it looks like I might be freezing up a little bit again. Oh, maybe we got it back.
We got it.
Still a little unstable on the internet connection as it keeps kind of popping up for me, but it seems like everything's recording fine. So
Great.
you've got a couple of different films, and it seems like with this one and one of your other ones you got looking at, you kind of got a bend towards horror. Uh, what is your draw to genre in general and maybe horror in particular?
Sure. I think for me, I love world building. I love making unapologetic social commentary. And I think it's super important when you're making a statement of any kind that you don't want to make it feel preachy because you'll immediately lose people left and right. Telling a story needs to come first, in my opinion. But when you want to weave through strong commentary, like in The Good Girls Get Fed short, um, and it's very strong and in your face, the commentary, I think for me, I'm very drawn to keeping things feeling very realistic, very grounded. Um, and I think that's kind of a brutal way to show people what the statement is, if that makes sense. So rather than keeping it in a fantastical world or in Good Girls, rather than it feeling like it's kind of fantastical or could be in the future, or um, I think keeping it feeling really painfully uh, grounded in the here and now is really important. And while I'm not one to want to focus on the gore, the blood or the trauma visually, I think leaving it psychologically in somebody's head is the worst way to do it, because the worst best way, because you're going to imagine something worse than, you could ever put on the screen. And something that is very personal to each individual viewer. So I say that because I think the genre space, especially horror, but genre in general, gives you that opportunity to do that and to create metaphors that are creative and grotesque and interesting and unique, that the audience can get excited about, but also relate to, because, you know, like um, like a movie that makes the monster a metaphor for cancer, for example. If anyone knows what film I'm talking about, so good. But that's a way to
You can name it. That's okay.
have the Babadook. But to have something thought-provoking afterwards, you can enjoy the monster story and the thrill, but at the end you're left with something more. And I think that's what draws me to genre um, in general. And I just love building worlds and making them up myself. So that's why I don't want to go in the past, because then I have to reference things and get it right. But if I make it up, nobody can tell me I'm wrong.
Good point. Some of the things you were saying there about how you make it more horrific by what you leave out
Hmm.
remind me of the one film, Reservoir Dogs,
Uh-huh.
because it's considered in there when the man gets his ear cut off. It's one of the most horrific scenes ever filmed,
Mm,
and it all happens off screen.
yeah.
That's so very much I like what you're saying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
along those lines of you're drawn into horror, you're drawn into genre, uh, and everything. But what was your inspiration? What was your drive, Kelly, to become and get into film and become a filmmaker?
Mm. I always was writing stories from when I was a child, like fiction stories, and I hand wrote my first fiction book in cursive in the fifth grade. I mean, always writing stories, and I was always acting, but it was like in musical theater and in theater. And in college, I discovered acting for the screen, which is allows for so much more nuance and subtlety, and just really speaks to, I think, my preferences. I love theater, don't get me wrong, but yeah, acting for the screen, I just fell in love with it. And I'm a very visual person, extremely visual. Like I can't write a script unless I can see the world. And since I've said I build the worlds and I make them up, a lot of the times that has me putting a diagram of a cruise ship and a diagram of a hotel and maybe like a diagram of, a skyscraper, and trying to put it together. So once I understand visually what the world looks like, then I can write, then I can create. If I'm acting, then I can do the acting prep work. So, I mean, directing kind of just made sense because I had such a clear vision for everything. So that's how I got into all of it. I think movies and TV, but movies especially. Um, yeah, it's just such a beautiful way to talk about important human things and give people release and help people feel seen, and just to have fun and, entertain and take people outside of worlds, um, or to worlds that they've never been.
Okay, so we've talked about your film here, Good Girls Get Fed, and where it's been, where it's going, kind of what you've got coming up yourself. So let's jump to something grander. If you had the opportunity to work on a project, your dream project,
Okay.
besides your own movie, what would it be?
Is this something that's pre-existing? Is this,
It could be pre-existing or something totally new that you would like to do. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I really have a love for movies, as I've said, but there is something very intriguing about the idea of starting a show. I do have a pilot that I wrote that, I mean, if there's ever a place where you can build world, that's this place. That's the one where I said with the cruise ship and the hotel diagrams and stuff. That was this one. I think it'd be such a blast to have. I do not want to show run. I don't think I ever want to show run, but to be a part of that creative team and to help bring that to life There's something pretty cool about the idea of knowing that you have a certain amount of episodes and having the time to delve into characters and, set these arcs up that, well, this thing was set up in episode 2, but it pays off in episode 7. I think getting to kind of help mastermind all of that storytelling and payoff, that's the satisfying part, is the payoff. I think that would be really neat.
Kind of a multi-movie deal is what those kind of were like.
I'll take that. I'll take that too.
Well, I just, I was talking to one person and I actually saw an interview on one. They were saying, well, we did, 3 episodes. And they were saying, that's all you did. And he goes, yeah, but each one was an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of the same thing. If you do a series and you got 6 episodes and they're all an hour long,
Yeah.
that's roughly 6 movies. That's
Yeah.
that's a lot of work. So,
Yeah.
and I understand what you mean about payoff. That's one of the fun things to watch in those. So we now kind of got an idea that you want to keep in your dream job would be creating your own world in a series. Got
Yes.
that, going all that. So, we kind of covered pretty much everything right here. But so I'm just going to kind of ask you kind of another question. There's a lot of people out there that I know that come and watch these, and they're like, and if someone came to you and said, I want to become a filmmaker, what piece of advice would you give them?
Awesome. Step one, make sure that you love it, that you cannot do anything else, because that's the level of passion and love. I'm not trying to be negative or pessimistic. I just mean that's the level you have to love it, is you just can't do anything else. And it does exist widespread. That's why going to festivals like FilmQuest and meeting a whole room full of folks who are insanely passionate, not just about their project, but like you talk to each other about each other's projects, or oh my God, did you see that comedy this morning? That was crazy, or the special effects in this other movie. People that are really excited about telling story and in this fashion. I think that's super important first. So as long as that box is checked, then I would say my first piece of advice would be no, plan for the long game. And if you're one of the few that, hits huge success right off the bat, awesome. And if you're not, that's okay too. I think being in it for the long game, learning that there are ups and that there are downs and that you have to fight for things and learning the value of your wins when you finally do get them, I think that is really what's the foundation to sustainability in the industry, and protects you from burnout, which, we'll all experience it, but you have to grind, you have to hustle, but you only can do that forever if you love it. Um, yeah, I think enjoying, oh my gosh, I sound like a poster on a wall, but you do. You have to enjoy the journey and you have to enjoy for auditions. I enjoy the prep. I enjoy shooting the self-tape audition. For writing, I enjoy the nightmare of figuring out what my world looks like, which is a pain and very stressful, but I love it and I can't. I get crazy with it. I get so obsessed with directing, oh my God, when you have to do a shot list for all of these different scenarios and scenes and it has to be so detailed, all of that prep, but you gotta love it. It can't just be waiting until you get on set. Well, it's all gonna be worth it when I get on set, which is, its own slew of challenges and joys, but and there will be plenty of things you don't love. So th how about this? Things to love along the way.
So that actually reminded me of another question that usually gets brought up a lot of times in the Q&As.
Yeah.
And it's always kind of a fun one. When you were shooting and looking at your movie,
hmm
was there anything in particular that kind of just popped out and you went, wow, that was so amazing and we weren't expecting it?
So after shooting it, something that came from it that was just
Yeah, either
unexpected.
during shooting, after shooting, during the editing, whenever that you just
Yeah,
have
yeah,
a,
yeah. There were multiple. I'm trying to think of which ones I can say. Oh, there was a very okay, talk around it, Kelly. Don't give us away the spoiler. There was a very somber, awkward, there's a thing towards the end. And it's the temperature of the scene, like it's like somber and stressful and gross and kind of like dark comedy, depending on who you talk to. And there was kind of this awkward moment with two of the actors. And right then, a car drove by, and we thought, oh, well, I decided let's just keep rolling and we'll just reset once the car passes. But in the moment, the two actors smiled and waved at the car, which we definitely kept in the film, and I think it was exactly what that moment needed. One of my producers, Mikhail Chowdhury, helped me cut out an entire, well, it wasn't a scene, it was like a small, tiny scene, and he gave me awesome way to think of it, which was love this scene, but you can still tell the story without it. And I think
Mhm.
this is a piece that belongs in the feature. And he was totally right. We didn't need that piece. Um, the actors, especially like Paula Velasquez and Kayla Klein, they just brought things that you could never dream of, right? When you see it on the page, and they just did things on screen where it's like, okay, well, I guess we're done with that. If we want to go once more, we can. But I mean, that was amazing. So just a lot of little pockets. Our composer, Taylor Page, for one of the scenes, one of the heavier scenes towards the end, the only instructions I gave her, such an annoying director, was I want that old generational ache that women just carry. That's what I got. And she just thought about it, nodded, okay, I have an idea. And I mean, that was one of the ones where I had the fewest notes for the music. So it was a really wonderful team to get to work with.
Well, it was a great little film. Uh,
Thank you.
I won't say it was happy and uplifting, but
No.
and I do know exactly which scene you're talking about when the car drive-bys and the waves, because that is part of that cringe factor that was added in when it's just like, just that whole yeah, everything's so nice and normal.
Yeah. And they do it in unison, so I don't know who started it, you know? They just did it both at the same time.
So yeah, that seemed like it was right, partly scripted right in, which like, okay, makes it great. So I want
Yes.
to thank you for joining us. I want to thank everybody else for joining us and, take a look at this film if you get an opportunity. It's really good. Um, I look forward to the feature. I don't know if you knew this or not, but this past year at FilmQuest, two of the features showed in previous years as shorts. So
Oh, I noticed. Trust me, I was like, ha, they're doing the thing.
yes, it does
Very
happen out there.
clever.
So, any final words you'd like to say? This is like I usually tell people, and I'm sure people watching have heard this before. This is your chance to practice your Oscar speech.
Oh my gosh, my Oscar speech. Well, all I'll say is that this film couldn't have been what it was with the team that I had. And um, my favorite compliment on set, favorite compliment, and it just kept happening the entire shoot, was people coming up to me and just saying, man, this team is the most professional, talented, sweet, kind, caring, funny group of people that I've worked with in a very long time. Some people told me it was their best experience on set, and that is because of the team that we had. So, very, very grateful for them.
All right. Glad to hear it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this time around with Guildmaster Gaming and Kelly Lou Dennis with her film, Good Girls Get Fed. Keep an eye out for it. If you like horror, this is one to check out. If you know people that like horror, share this video with them so they could hear about it and kind of keep an eye out for it too. And if you would always subscribe to the channel, that helps us to produce more of what we're doing now. Thank you again, Kelly, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Daniel. Take care.